Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Less than 20 days remain before Purdue kicks off the season against Ball State. Today, it's time to preview the schedule. We'll look at all 12 of Purdue's opponents this fall, providing an early look at the team. We'll dive deeper into the schedule with some trends, big picture thoughts, analysis, all of that, talking Purdue's schedule and the 12 teams Purdue will play here on the show today. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. We'll be tweeting through every game as always. Lots of thoughts, lots of insight throughout the season. Come join the conversation there. You can always send in questions for the show there on Twitter at Boilers Beyond, or you can email the show, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com, and be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. That way you don't miss an episode. We'll be coming to you every single week between now and the end of basketball season, whenever that may be, all the way through April here on a weekly basis. Be sure to subscribe. A couple of pieces of camp news, really just one so far. Purdue is 2 weeks into fall camp. They had a scrimmage last weekend. Not a lot of news coming out of there, as you might expect. The one piece of news, though, Charles Ross, not going to be a part of the team this year, has to medically retire from the sport. Not much out there on what happened. He was going to be a sixth-year transfer from USC. He was a guy I was very interested in. We talked about he and Chauncey Magwood as a little bit of a tandem, two guys who came in with offensive staff members from their previous stops. I thought he could play a role this year. He will not. He stepped away from the team, medically retiring from the sport. Past that, though, it's been pretty slow. You knock on wood, of course. You still have 2 weeks of fall camp and then game week practice to get to before Ball State. It's Monday night here as I record this. No major injuries, no real updates. The quarterback battle remains ongoing, and that is the number one storyline coming out of Purdue's camp. There has not been a lot of news. Neither Barry Odom nor the offensive staffers have wanted to divulge much information there. By all accounts, it is between Ryan Brown and Malachi Singleton to be the starting quarterback. Going to be interesting to see where things go there. My hunch remains that Ryan Brown gets the spot. That is not based off of any inside information. That's based solely off of observing the fact that Purdue went through spring practice and decided it wanted to bring him in. We'll see. My thought here, I bet Purdue names a quarterback following this Saturday's scrimmage. I bet Purdue names a quarterback coming out of that. Whether we get it publicly or not, I don't know, but I bet that's when Purdue decides on a guy. Let's get into the schedule here today, though, because we got 12 teams and some big picture thoughts to get through. Purdue opens up with Ball State. This is a series that Purdue leads all-time 8-0, but this is the first matchup in 15 years. This has not been played since 2010, when Purdue took down Ball State in a 24-13 contest inside Ross-Ade Stadium. Two programs in a similar position. Ball State is hitting refresh as well. Mike New was fired last year after a 9-year run. They had a really good year in the 2020 COVID season. Ball State went one loss, won the MAC. I remember watching Ball State play in a bowl game on Christmas Day that year. Why I remember that, I don't know, but I do remember it. I'm not an expert on all the happenings in Muncie by any means. It's a tough time to be a MAC program. These are not tremendously well-resourced universities, and by association, these are not tremendously well-resourced athletic departments. Ball State is probably in the lower part of the MAC in that. It's not a flush with cash athletic department, but Ball State brings in Mike Uremovich from Butler. Indications are he's going to really want to run the ball, utilizing the quarterback run game quite a bit. That's an interesting hire to me, only because I know enough to be dangerous about that Pioneer League where Butler is. It's a good hire for Ball State in the sense that this is someone who's used to playing with a disadvantage. Butler's a non-scholarship football program. In that league, it's very bizarre. Butler and Valparaiso are both in there. In the Pioneer League, they compete in the FCS and they can qualify for the FCS playoffs, but it's a non-scholarship conference. So he's used to trying to punch above his weight class a little bit. Similarly, Urimovich did go to Purdue as well. I don't believe he played at Purdue. If he did, there is no documentation out there on it that I could find. But a lot of roster churn. Anytime you have a coaching change in this era, there's going to be. Look, I don't know what Ball State's going to look like. Reading a little bit of stuff out of camp, we'll talk more before the week 1 game. I think it's going to be a really run-heavy offense. It sounds like Ball State's going to really run their quarterback. You can't lose this game. You just can't. I know, no pressure, Barry Odom, no pressure, Purdue. You can't come out and lose this game. You just can't. And you can't do it in week 2 either against Southern Illinois. Purdue is 14-0 against FCS competition since the split back in the late 70s into 1A, 1AA that became FBS and FCS. Southern Illinois is a solid FCS program. It's been to the playoffs a few times in recent years. It did not have a great 2024, but it appears like it's going to be better this season. Southern Illinois was picked 6th in the Missouri Valley. That's going to be one of your better conferences in the FCS. You have North Dakota State, South Dakota State in there. I believe Northern Iowa's there. That's a pretty strong league at the FCS level. My hunch, and I don't know, I'm not going to sit here and claim to be an expert on Ball State and Southern Illinois football. If that's what you're looking for, I don't know if it's out there, but my thought is that this is not going to be a big step down than what Purdue sees in Ball State. I know Purdue is favored by 16.5 against Ball State. I doubt that spread looks vastly different against Southern Illinois. Maybe 21, somewhere in there. We'll see what Purdue looks like week 1. I'm guessing, though, those two teams are not a massive world apart from one another. Maybe I'm wrong. It's a night game. You should have some enthusiasm if you can get by Ball State, especially if you can do so in resounding fashion. If you can cover that 16.5 point spread, get people feeling good, maybe score on a trick play or two or do something exciting, it'd be fun. It'd get people excited for that night game in week 2. You really have to be 2-0 because the schedule ramps up quickly after that. Southern Cal comes to West Lafayette for week 3. This is the first meeting between the two since Southern Cal joined the Big Ten. The first meeting between the two programs since the 1998 Pigskin Classic, I believe, unless I'm forgetting one. Drew Brees' first start at Purdue out there on a scorching hot day in what was week 0 back then, I believe. Fascinating season for USC coming up here. It's year 4 of the Lincoln Riley era. It has not gone how Southern Cal fans had hoped. Year 1, Southern Cal almost made the playoffs. I believe they were winning semi-deep into that Pac-12 championship game before Caleb Williams got hurt. They ended up losing. They do not go to the playoff. And then year 2, they take a sizable step back with an awful defense. Last season, bad close game luck. Whether it's luck, whether there's something more to it, I'll let you decide. But USC in close games last year really struggled. Now this year, there's real pressure on Lincoln Riley. By all accounts, it is not feasible for USC to fire him with his buyout situation. It sounds like no matter what, he's going to be back for another year. I'll take the word for it of folks that I read. They probably know more about this than I do. They certainly do. I don't cover USC. But I do like this USC team on paper. Defense got a lot better from 23 to 24. Deanton Lynn was a good hire at defensive coordinator. They brought him across town from UCLA. Jaden Maeva, back for year 2 as the quarterback. He took over late last season. Interesting connection here. USC is going to start Jaden Maeva at quarterback. He won Mountain West Freshman of the Year for UNLV back in 2023, Barry Odom's first year there, before he left to transfer to Southern Cal ahead of last season. I think that tells you something about the pecking order of programs, the hierarchy in college football these days, when someone leaves a starting job to go be a backup in the Big Ten. But he's talented, a little bit of a dual threat guy, should fit nicely into what Lincoln Riley wants to do. It's a good roster. It is not a loaded Ohio State, Penn State type of roster. But when you kind of compare it to other teams in the league, it's going to be a better roster than probably anyone from the old Big Ten West, looking at those teams. USC will come in 2-0. It has Missouri State and Georgia Southern before this. Welcome to the FBS, Missouri State, by the way. It should be 2-0. And at that point, it's a 3:30 kick on CBS. If Purdue's 2-0, you're feeling okay. It's a big opportunity. Can Purdue rattle them? Can Purdue get off to a hot start? Southern Cal will be thousands of miles away from home. At that point, who knows? Anything can happen. But that's a daunting game. That's not an easy one. That's a big step up. And then Purdue goes to South Bend to take on Notre Dame. Notre Dame is as physical of a football program as you will find in today's sport. That part alone will really test where Purdue is on the lines of scrimmage. I'm fairly high on Purdue in the trenches coming into this season. Maybe that's just buying into some optimism, buying into some of the positive preseason talk. But I do think that Purdue has some nice, intriguing pieces, especially on the offensive line and on the defensive line too. TJ Lindsey, I'm fascinated to see. But Notre Dame is a bear of an opponent in the trenches. I mean, a really, really difficult opponent to deal with in the trenches. That's going to be a massive challenge for Purdue. We'll talk about the merits of playing this game and the merits of this series later on in the episode. But Marcus Freeman has this program on a wonderful trajectory. I'm telling you guys, I grew up hating Notre Dame. I grew up in the South Bend TV market as a Purdue fan. I grew up around tons of the Notre Dame football, Indiana basketball fans. As a little kid, I could not stand Notre Dame. And now, Marcus Freeman has made that program really difficult to hate. He is a likable guy. He's built a likable program. They do a lot of things really well. The roster is stacked. This is a fantastic Notre Dame roster. Jeremiah Love is a dark horse Heisman contender. The big question is at quarterback. CJ Carr, the grandson of Lloyd Carr, the former Michigan coach. He was a big-time blue-chip quarterback recruit. It's his time. It sounds like there's a battle there with Kenny Minchey, who Purdue fans saw a little bit late in the game last season. We'll see. We'll see who wins that job. But if Notre Dame can get big-time quarterback play, that's a national championship contender in South Bend that Purdue goes up to. Not going to be easy. One silver lining here, Purdue gets a bye after that game, so you get a week to reset. The body blow theory is one that it's up to you how much you buy into it, dealing with the effects of playing a really physical team the week after. But if you're a believer in it, then it certainly helps that Purdue gets a week off after playing up in South Bend. October begins for Purdue with Illinois. And you want to talk about a team that I'm not quite sure about. Illinois is a fascinating case study coming into this season. Illinois went 10-3 last year. It returns a ton of its production. Some of the advanced stats will tell you that Illinois wasn't that good last year. I know Bill Connolly over at ESPN, he does S&P Plus. His numbers will tell you that ESPN that Illinois should have lost 2 more games than it did last year. That in the regular season, that's probably an 8-5 team instead of a 9-3 team. That's a very different look. Illinois had that wild win at Rutgers on a catch and run as time expired to win it. It had the wild win against Purdue. You'll remember that. There were a few others in there where Illinois won close games. We had Brett Ciancia on last week, and that was a blast. If you haven't listened to that, I think you'll really get a lot out of that interview. Brett is fantastic, but he said relative to the rest of the prognostication world, he is lower on Illinois than anyone else out there. He doesn't have Illinois in the top half of the Power Four. But Illinois was a good team last year. It was legitimately good. Luke Altmaier is a good quarterback who's played a lot of football. He returns for his 3rd season as the quarterback there. You do not find a lot of 3-year starters in college football these days. The run game should continue to be a strength. It's a Brett Bielema offense. Illinois should be able to run the ball. That defense gets a lot of really nice pieces back. The offensive line gets a lot back, including a big left tackle that they were really excited about. The back and forth is real for me here. I don't quite know what to expect from Illinois, whether it can live up to the lofty expectations or not, but at bare minimum, this is going to be a solid, competitive Illinois team. Purdue's going to be a significant underdog here. If Purdue's markedly better than expected, it's not impossible, but Purdue's going to be a pretty big underdog here, and a lot of this is going to lie on how real Illinois is. From there, I know we're kind of rattling off game by game here, but I want to get to everyone. Up to Minnesota, and it's an interesting situation there where PJ Fleck has made Minnesota really consistently solid. Since 2017, when he inherited a bit of a mess up there, his first year was 2017. Since then, the only time Minnesota has missed a bowl was the COVID-shortened 2020 season. You look at Minnesota's history, that's rock solid. That is rock solid for what Minnesota football has historically been. It has not quite reached the point where it's incapable of losing to inferior opponents. That's a difficult level to reach. And when you're not recruiting at the blue chip level, like a Michigan or an Ohio State or a Penn State, it's hard to do. It's a road game. It's at night. It's not an unwinnable spot. Minnesota's relying on a redshirt freshman at quarterback. I always wonder with PJ Fleck teams if there's ever going to come a time where a team just isn't into it, isn't into him. I don't know. Maybe that'll never happen. I just wonder because he's a lot. He's a really good coach, but he's a lot. That's going to be interesting to see. But Purdue's got a challenge there. And then it goes to Northwestern for a unique game, a very unique game. This will be at that temporary stadium on the lakeshore there. The new Ryan Field is supposed to open up next fall. So Northwestern will, for the second year, will be splitting its games between the field on the lakeshore and Wrigley Field when the Cubs season ends, which at this rate is looking like it's going to be earlier than anyone would like. Atmosphere is going to be very muted, to put it mildly, both because the stadium doesn't seat many fans and the Northwestern program is in a tricky spot here. There are some real challenges that Northwestern faces in this era of college football. The academic standards make it nearly impossible for Northwestern to be super transfer portal happy. You are relying heavily on high school recruitment, which is already a little bit difficult at Northwestern because of those academic restrictions, in an era where teams are able to get old through the portal, add guys who are in their 5th year of college football. It's a tricky spot up there. Preston Stone from SMU comes in at quarterback. He was really good for SMU in 2023 and then could not win the job last year. Got beat out by Kevin Jennings, who was really good, took SMU to the playoff. But what's the reality? Is this a quarterback who can make a difference up there? Bring Northwestern out of that bottom 3, bottom 4 of the conference. If you're just looking on paper at what odds makers and probability will tell you, this is Purdue's third most winnable game behind Ball State and Southern Illinois. And then you don't have to wait long for Purdue to get its fourth most winnable game because Rutgers comes to town. Purdue is still awaiting its first ever win over Rutgers. Despite Rutgers being the first team to play college football back in 1869, the year Purdue was founded, 1869, Purdue and Rutgers have only played twice. In 2017, Purdue loses 14-12 at Rutgers. Purdue outgained Rutgers 474-217, only scores 12 points and loses. I have memories of that one. That was a Jeff Brom wheel of quarterbacks game that kind of ended it for the 2017 season. And then in 2020, Rutgers ran all over Bob Diaco's Purdue defense. That was late November, early December, somewhere in there in Ross-Ade Stadium. So Purdue's 0-2 against Rutgers all time. Not ideal. Greg Schiano has done a really good job since he retook over that program. It's a difficult job. It's a really difficult job. You are in an area of the country that does not particularly care about college football. If you want to talk about history, Rutgers probably has less historical success than anyone in the Big Ten. And there are some programs in the Big Ten that are not exactly flush with that. But Schiano's made them competitive. When you go back to Rutgers' Big East days, he led the best years of Rutgers football there. And since it's joined the Big Ten with Kyle Flood and Chris Ash, and has there been a third coach? I don't know. I can't remember if there has been. This is by far the best Rutgers has been as a member of the Big Ten Conference. Ethan Kaliakmanis is still there at quarterback. Rough season at Minnesota in 23. He was okay last year. It might be a good scheduling spot for Purdue, though. Rutgers goes to Washington, plays at home against Oregon, and then goes to Purdue. So you've got some travel. You've got a couple teams better than Rutgers. It's not a spot where Purdue is likely to be favored. If the game was played right now, Purdue would not be close to favored. Anything can happen. That's a long ways away at the end of October. It is a game Purdue can win when you look at it. Then it gets difficult. As we enter this stretch, Purdue's played 4 games in a row. It goes up to Michigan, where all eyes are on Bryce Underwood, the number 1 quarterback recruit in the country. Michigan paid a reported 8 figures to him to get him to Ann Arbor. He projects as the day 1 starter. I was reading a piece from On3 earlier. Sounds like that's still a go up there. It's going to be Underwood. Can he live up to the expectations? It's a bit of a double-edged sword up there. It's a strange spot because for the most part last year, Michigan was wholly disappointing. Michigan had one of the worst offenses you'll ever see. It was a good defense, but the offense could not score points and put Michigan in a bad spot to where Michigan was 5-5 entering the last 2 weeks. It blows out Northwestern. It beats Ohio State and Columbus. And then in the bowl game, it beats Alabama. What is reality for Michigan up there? Because this was a Brian Ferentz, Iowa level of offense last season. It was abysmally bad. The run game was fine, but there was no passing game at all. And that's why Underwood is there. He is there to be a day 1 guy who can elevate that. I don't know about the wide receivers. I don't know what to expect there. But if Michigan can get decent quarterback play from Underwood from day 1, and if the defense can remain at that big-time level, Michigan's a playoff contender, no doubt. Michigan has recruited at a pretty high level over the last handful of years, As a brand, it's really rebolstered itself. It's done a really nice job here, capitalizing on the momentum that Jim Harbaugh gave it after he was almost ran out of there. Statistically speaking, Purdue has won once in Ann Arbor since 1969. That was back in 2009 when Michigan was still in Rich Rodriguez purgatory. Purdue went up there and won 38-36. A difficult spot that only gets more difficult when you look at what's on deck. Ohio State coming to Ross-Ade Stadium. The defending national champions are going to be good once again. Jeremiah Smith is one of the most dominant college receivers I have ever seen, and he's only going to be a true sophomore. What he did last season as a true freshman was remarkable. There are not many athletes capable of doing what he's capable of doing. You look on the defensive side of the ball, Caleb Downs isn't far from that. He is elite at the safety position. Quarterback remains a question. That's a job that consensus was that Julian Sayin was going to be the starter. Sounds like it's still an open competition up there. Purdue has had some success in this series. In the 21st century, Purdue's won 5 times, all of them in Ross-Ade Stadium, 2000, 04, 09, 11, and 18. Awfully tall task here. This is a program that, for most of those wins, was good. 2000 would have been John Cooper. The next 3, 04 and 09 would have been Tressel. 11 was that Luke Fickell year. Since they really got rolling under Urban Meyer, it's only been that 2018 game. This program is operating at as high of a level as exists in the sport. That's a loaded roster. And then Purdue's 7th game in as many weeks after playing Michigan, after playing Ohio State, Purdue gets to fly out to Seattle. Any storylines in this one? Oh, wait. Purdue gets a chance at revenge against Ryan Walters. That's going to be the storyline here, right or wrong. To be frank, there aren't that many players left who suited up for Ryan Walters last season. I think this will be significant to the fans. The question for me at this point, where is Purdue at? To quote Jeff Brom, does Purdue still have a pulse? This is a tough spot. When you're playing your 7th game in as many weeks, that's a really tough spot to be in. You're going out west. I don't always love the travel theories. I think it can get overblown at times, but this is a pretty difficult spot to go out to Seattle in. Washington is a trendy team entering the season. DeMond Williams, really athletic quarterback. Really athletic quarterback. He was phenomenal in their bowl game loss against Louisville. 300 passing, 200 rushing yards. Jedd Fisch can coach. He did a terrific job at Arizona, and you look at what Arizona did in the first year without him, falling off a cliff. I think that tells you something about Jedd Fisch. Looks like they could be poised for a big year 2 jump up in Seattle after going 6-6 last year. It's a rematch of the 2000 Rose Bowl and the 2002 Sun Bowl. This will be the 11th meeting, though. They had a double home and home in the late 80s, early 90s. These two programs have played each other. It's just been a while. And then Purdue finally gets a bye before Indiana. How much of last season is duplicable? Because Indiana gets a lot back from last year's roster. That the returning production there is pretty significant. The 66-0 loss in Bloomington is the worst Purdue football game I've ever watched. It simply does not get more humiliating than that. That can't happen again. I'd be stunned if it did happen again. Purdue will look to recreate some of the in-state momentum that it had for the better part of the Jeff Brom years. Early on, Purdue had it. Then Indiana had a nice 2019 and had the big 2020 season. And you'll remember going into 2021, there was a lot of optimism on the Indiana side that it had eclipsed Purdue as the better program. Of course, we saw what happened. Indiana goes 2-10 that year. Purdue goes 9-4. The script got flipped on Tom Allen pretty quick. To be frank, I am not calling for that to happen here. I think Curt Cignetti is a better coach than Tom Allen, and I think the roster is a lot better than those IU teams were. It won't happen overnight. Big question for Indiana, how real is Fernando Mendoza? Transfer quarterback from Cal. There's some first-round NFL buzz around him. If he lives up to that, Indiana could be quite good again. If not, we'll see. It's a fairly advantageous schedule for Indiana. It's not as light as it was last year. And we'll see, again, where Purdue is at the end of the season. This rivalry game is not one that, is a must-win this year, but it is one that Barry Odom needs to win in his first couple years at Purdue. You can't, I don't know, and this goes for Indiana too, I don't know that you can really establish yourself where you want to be without being the quote-unquote preeminent program in the state in the Big Ten. And really, they've never been good at the same time before. I mean, you got to go back to like 1967 for that. So it's an interesting schedule here. This episode is brought to you by me. Yes, me. When I'm not watching sports, or more accurately, talking about them, I'm talking insurance with the people of Indiana. As an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, I want to help you protect what you've worked hard to achieve. From home and auto to life and business insurance, I'm here to help you. Give me a call at 317-846-5861 or email me at jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com, and let's protect you from life's everyday risks. This is going to be a part of the annual conversation for Purdue in the expanded 18-team Big Ten. The schedule is difficult. This is the result of adding the 4 West Coast teams to the league. That made the league so much deeper. We spend a lot of time talking about the non-conference schedule, and we're about to here momentarily for a couple minutes, and we do so for good reason. It's the part of the schedule that schools can control. League games are out of your hands, but the non-conference is just 1/4 of the season when you're in the Big Ten. The other 3 quarters will always be largely difficult. You can play with all the calculations in the world, all the combinations of 9 opponents. There aren't many combinations out there that can grant you a light schedule. That's the part. The part of the schedule that's out of Purdue's control is what makes it so difficult. Because sure, Purdue's playing Notre Dame this year. Should it be playing Notre Dame this year? I don't know. It's a tough sell. If your goal is to win as many games as possible, then no. And if you're Purdue, that's probably your goal here. I don't know that the brand boost that came with playing Notre Dame in the 80s and 90s still exists in the same way. Back then, part of the sell of playing Notre Dame was your games would be on TV. NBC had that TV contract. You were going to be on TV every week. Now, every game's on TV. You can live in Alaska, and you can see every Purdue football game if you have a Wi-Fi connection and YouTube TV and Peacock. It's not that hard. It's not that hard at all. So, does it give you that much of a benefit? I don't know. It's a good look to try to challenge yourself a little bit. You don't go through the negative PR of not playing anybody. But this series has been non-competitive for the most part since Joe Tiller left Purdue. You're locked in for a few more years of it. This series goes through 2028. I'll be shocked if this series gets extended past then, but I've been surprised before. We'll see. Purdue's got to start 2-0. There is no other way around it. Losing one of those games would be catastrophic. You cannot lose to Ball State or Southern Illinois. I don't think Purdue will, but it's important to note. If Purdue is going to overachieve, October needs to be very fruitful. Illinois, at Minnesota, at Northwestern, Rutgers. If you start 2-0, and if you steal 2 in October, then you're over the 3.5 win total. And that's sitting out right now at sportsbooks heavily juiced to the under. We're talking heavy. I'm pulling up DraftKings right now. Purdue's win total is, where'd it go? Purdue's win total is at 2.5 here. Never mind, that's moved now. So you're looking at 2.5 here on DraftKings with an over at minus 200. Not overwhelming. Not overwhelming at all. Look, you can't go 2-10. You can't. I talked about this on the Eyes on Big podcast last week. You can't go 2-10 and lose your last 10. That would be a real buzzkill. It'd be really disappointing. You got to find a way to win a Big Ten game or two. Look, I did look into this. I mean, history tells you it's highly unlikely that Purdue goes back-to-back years not winning a Big Ten game. That you have that going for you. But if you can go into October and you can steal one of them, at Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, or Minnesota, those are probably less likely, but if you can get one of those, get 2 of those, then you feel good about yourself because, yeah, the bye weeks aren't optimal. Getting the first bye week is perfectly timed. That's perfect. You're a third of the way through your season. You'll have just played Notre Dame. That's great. 7 straight games, closing with at Michigan, Ohio State, at Washington. That's brutal. I don't know who Purdue pissed off up in Chicago, but that is a brutal draw from the Big Ten for Purdue. And then you have 1 week after that when, look, let's face it, unless Purdue is 5-6 at that point, you're playing for pride, which Purdue should have plenty of reason to do so. But we saw how that went last year. That's a tough spot to have a bye to throw you out of your rhythm a bit. There's a reason the win total is low. There are a lot of unknowns on this roster. That can be a good or a bad thing. It's certainly possible that Purdue outperforms expectations. In the portal era, we have no good way to calculate what Purdue has on this roster. It just doesn't exist. There's not a clean way to look at this roster and know exactly what Purdue has. A lot of players coming from UNLV, taking the jump up from the group of 5 to the Power 4. Next week, we're going to talk about what success looks like because that's quite the onion. There's a lot of layers to that. It's absolutely plausible that Purdue is significantly better than the experts think. I think it's also completely fair that Purdue is almost, if not unanimously, picked 18th. Purdue has the most questions of anyone, and it just went 1-11. Fair enough. It's a difficult schedule. There's a lot of unknown here. We're going to find out the reality really soon. 19 days from now, we'll know. I'll be sitting here 19 days from now watching the night games, working on my morning after episode to talk about whatever goes down in Purdue Ball State. That's what I have for you guys. Thank you for spending your time with me. 2 more episodes before the start of the season. Next week, we're going to talk about the upcoming season, what success looks like for Purdue. Send over your thoughts. Send over your questions on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. Email them to me, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. Then after that, it's game week. Make some predictions. Make some final thoughts. Some zesty statements. Preview Ball State. And get into all of that good stuff. Maybe we'll have a depth chart by then, too. Give us a little bit of an idea. Send me over questions, guys. Got a couple weeks. Want to get some good mailbag in. Until next week, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the episode. Take care, everybody.